A press release from the Alberta NDP landed in my inbox this afternoon, and it really requires a response. The context here is that on Thursday, tomorrow, the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is going to release the first couple of projects that will be designated as projects of national interest. And there was a lot of talk about how a pipeline would be on the list, but apparently it's not going to be on the list for the first couple. Doesn't mean it won't be in the future. But so the NDP thought they would preempt the announcement and send out a press release criticizing Premier Danielle Smith's United Conservative Party. Let me read from it. And this is Court Ellingson, who is the NDP Shadow Minister for Finance. Alberta needs a commitment from both the provincial and federal governments that supports its growth. Conversations about major pipeline projects are a step in the right direction. Ellingson goes on to say, to date, we have not seen a confirmed pipeline proponent despite the UCP government's promises. Then, this is not Ellingson talking, this is in the body of the press release. The caucus emphasized that Alberta needs more projects approved and implemented, and Alberta's New Democrats have been the only government in modern history to have successfully completed a major pipeline in 2015. Now, the horrendous sentence structure aside, implying that a major pipeline was completed in 2015, not the case. So let me refresh your memory. In November of 2015, then NDP Premier Rachel Notley introduced the Climate Leadership Plan. Federal Liberals really liked that. And so kind of in return, they had a handshake deal. In return, in October of 2016, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau approved two pipelines. One is the Trans Mountain expansion to the West Coast. One is the repair of the Line 3, which is 360,000 barrels out in eastern Canada. Then the private proponent, Kinder Morgan, withdrew because of repeated political opposition from the city of Burnaby and the BC government. The federal government bought the project for $5.7 billion, finally completed it in 2024 at a cost of $34 billion, and it's been in operation just over a year now, not 2015. But, if I squinted at this press release, held my tongue, and maybe parsed it carefully, you might be able to argue that the NDP is not advocating for more pipelines. Except the problem is that both Naheed Nenshi, the leader, and Ellingson are on the record as supporting more pipelines. I mean, Nenshi even said that when he was mayor of Calgary, he advocated for both Trans Mountain expansion and Energy East. I mean, come on. They're clearly on the record here. This is a pipeline supporting. So here's my problem. They're the opposition. What is their job? Well, Her Majesty's opposition has two. One is to criticize the government, which, they did here in some general terms and do on a regular basis. But it's the second one that's really important and it's relevant here. And that is to advance alternate plans. They are the government in waiting. It's their job to say, no, the government, this is a bad policy proposal or bad policy. Here is how we could do things better. So, in this context, instead of arguing for more pipelines, well, here's what they could have suggested. And these are all positions that Energy Media has advocated for in the past. First of all, start building an advanced materials manufacturing sector using bitumen as feedstock. We've been on this for years. The Alberta Innovates, the provincial agency, is like a year, maybe two, away from having a commercial process to turn bitumen into carbon fiber, into asphalt binder, into graphite, and then apparently there are many other products, materials that they could make. They just haven't had the time or funding to do the research yet. That's one. Expand Alberta's petrochemical sector by adding direct crude to chemical processing. Thanks to former Premier Peter Naheed, Alberta has the second largest petrochemical cluster in all of North America. Most of it's outside Edmonton. The Saudis and the Chinese are working on or have implemented a process where instead of refining crude into refining crude and then turning that into chemicals, you go straight from crude to chemicals. So it's a lot more efficient and a lot cheaper. Why couldn't we do that in Alberta instead of shipping it off to China and letting them do it? Third thing, optimize Trans Mountain expansion, including partial upgrading. Did you know that every time you ship dilbit in a pipeline, 30% of that is diluent, which has no value and just takes up space inside the pipeline, and it's required to make that peanut buttery bitumen flow in a pipeline. But you can partially upgrade it to either a heavy crude or a medium crude that will flow in the pipeline. So you've got 590,000 barrels a day now, potentially 890,000 barrels a day. And if every barrel of that was heavy crude destined for market and no diluent, you could get 890,000 barrels a day maybe, which might be all you need, and you would need a second pipeline. Fourth thing, optimize pipelines to U.S. markets. Now I know that the U.S. is currently not in favor, and Donald Trump and all of that kind of stuff, but this fact remains that Canada is still the least cost, most competitive heavy crude barrel in North America. Better than Mexico, better than Brazil, better than Venezuela, better than everybody. And we already have 60% of the market. And there are 650,000 barrels a day of potential shipping capacity in existing pipelines that could be optimized, just sitting there waiting. So there are four things that they could have come forward with and said, instead of doing that, let's do these things. Let's lower our risk, create new industry here at home, create a domestic market for. Energy media has been all over this. You can search our channel, and we've talked about all of this stuff at length. Then they go on to talk about how we need a stronger future, yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's just a bunch of, meaningless nothing. But their real criticism here is that the outlining key steps for success for both governments. End talk of separation. Restore investor confidence by addressing corruption in the UCP. Secure Canada's economic future through Canadian market development, smart deployment. That's not an energy policy. That's a nothing burger. That's what that is. So my point here is that we've been criticizing the UCP government of Danielle Smith for years, since she became premier in 2022. Her approach is out of step with what's going on at the global level. She's trying to palm off environmental liability costs for the industry onto taxpayers. I mean, there are so many things wrong with her energy policy, and I've been busy criticizing her and have ignored the NDP because they haven't said a whole lot that's worth reporting on. But I couldn't let this one go. If I'm going to criticize the UCP and Danielle Smith, I had to say something about this, because Naheed Nenshi has been head of the party for over a year now, and he either is going to step up at some point and have a credible energy policy, or he's going to continue with UCP light, which is what this is. In fact, I would say this is not even UCP light. The pipeline part is just UCP. It's essentially arguing for exactly what the UCP have been arguing for themselves. This is not how politics are supposed to be done. This is not how the opposition is supposed to behave. They're supposed to have ideas, not be bereft of ideas. So something's got to change here. I think, we're going to have this debate now for months ahead, because it looks like the pipeline's not going to be a project of national interest immediately. So then that, Premier Smith will come out and complain and criticize the government. And so this is not going to stop. This is an opportunity for Naheed Nenshi to step forward and have some credible ideas. And for goodness sakes, he could do worse than going and searching Energy Media's YouTube channel. We've got lots of them there. If his advisors can't come up with one themselves, we'd be happy to provide them. But how sad and pathetic is that if that's where he has to get his ideas from? Anyway, I've had enough. I've said enough about this, and this is weak sauce at best and not befitting of His Majesty's official opposition.